What is up?
Mr. Madden!
Hey, class, say hello. Hey, rotate your desk so we're facing this way down. Hey, so flow from Seattle all the way down to Mexico City. We're going to rock through these questions. Actually, we kind of
I haven't seen you in a while. It's so fun to say hi.
we can chat after. Wow.
Years.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, if you can't hear anything, I'll be walking around and check it out. There are
Okay.
first two people.
Are you taking turns at a special table?
Yeah, this is the question asker table.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Fancy.
Fancy.
You're going to rock through the
Okay.
questions. Oh, by the way, if anybody comes up with another question you want to kind of jump in or ask for clarification, just do it. Just come on up. No problem.
Hey.
Let's go.
My name's Kayla, and can you tell us about your background, where you went to school, and the kinds of things that you studied?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm from California, from Southern California, kind of near LA. And I was really in high school, I got really into Spanish, my Spanish classes, and biology. I really, really liked biology. And so in college, I was a human biology major. It's like a interdisciplinary biology that they had at my university, Stanford, in Bay Area, California. And I minored in Latin American studies. So the things I liked in high school, I actually ended up studying in college too. And I lived for a semester in South America and did a program in ecology, cultural and natural ecology. And then after college, I didn't want to be in school anymore. I was tired of school. And so I did all sorts of environmental education. And I lived in South America and did guiding and like the Andean cloud forests. And I lived on farms in California. I did urban gardening in my hometown in Long Beach, California. And then I decided to get a master's. So I decided to get a master's in environmental studies, which is like a professional master's degree. And when I was there, I really liked studying again. So I decided after my first year to apply to get a PhD. But I wanted to get a PhD in something that was really interdisciplinary, that was like people and environment and all the combination. And so I found geography. And geography isn't even in most schools or in most universities. A lot of universities don't have it. UW has a great geography department. Go Huskies, right? And and so I checked out a bunch of different ones, and I decided UC Santa Barbara. I went back to California, and that's where I got my PhD. So it was like an evolution of wanting to do things related to the environment, liking things in Latin America and in Spanish, liking things that had to do with people and the environment, and so I kept finding like different ways to work in that and to study that stuff. Does that answer your question? Do you have any sub questions after that question? No? Okay. No.
My name is Jackson, and what is your favorite
Hi,
thing
Jackson.
about being a geographer slash ecologist?
So my favorite thing is that first of all, I get paid to travel mostly. I haven't paid to travel in a really long time. When I used to do more like field ecology, I got paid to be outdoors. That was really cool. I spent 2 summers in college in Colorado studying butterflies. That was really awesome. It's like I got basically a scholarship to go hiking and biking and in the Rockies. That was really cool. And also in like being a university professor, I like teaching. I like working with students. So I almost after my PhD went to be a high school teacher. I still think about it, but I'm still doing university teaching. So maybe someday I'll be knocking on the door for a job. So Yeah, thanks for the question.
Hey, can I interrupt real quick? Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about the Colorado butterfly experience? Like, what were you doing? Who was it with?
So
And stuff?
this is a story actually that I tell my students here in Mexico, and they like this story. So the story, I'll just give you like a slightly longer version of that story. So when I was in my second year in college, I was taking this interdisciplinary environmental biology degree. And so there was a professor that was talking about butterfly behavior, and she showed these amazing pictures of mountains, like amazing, beautiful mountains. You guys are probably used to this because you're from Seattle, but like when you're from Southern California, you don't see like green mountains beautiful everywhere, you know? So we can't see the mountains because of the smog in general, mostly. So so I was like, wow, that's so cool. And I went to her office and I was like, hey, I really liked your talk about the butterflies. And she was like, literally, this is what happened, I swear. She was like, oh, would you like to be my research assistant this summer? And I was like, what? I mean, I didn't even know what that was. I just liked the pictures of the mountains. So she invited me to come be her field assistant, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I arrived in the middle of the Rockies near Crested Butte. If any of you are skiers, you might know Crested Butte, Colorado. Anyone? Anyone?
Anyone?
Really beautiful. It's really, Mr. Madden knows, or someone else knows. Yeah, you've been really beautiful area. And so there's many of these. It's a biological laboratory. It's called the Rocky Mountain Biological Laboratory, Rumble, RMBL. I almost spelled it in Spanish, RMBL. And my brain's a little confused. So in that biological laboratory, people do field biology research or ecology research, and it's undergrads and grads and professors, and everyone's like dirty and going hiking and biking and studying butterflies and ants and marmots and birds. And it's really cool. So that kind of got me extremely excited about doing field work. But while I was there, I started getting actually a little more interested in the people that were using the area, the ranchers. It's also a ranching area. So I was like, whoa, what are those ranchers doing there? And I ended up doing a project for my undergrad thesis about how the ranching impacts pollinators, like if there are more or less diversity of pollinators, depending on if the cows are there, if they've been there, if they're going to be there, because the ranchers try and control so that they're not destroying things. So anyway, from there, I realized that I was actually into the people part almost more than I was into studying the butterflies. And that got me into doing more stuff with people in the environment. So that's a story. Really beautiful area.
Hi, I'm David, and my question is, what and who inspired you to become a scientist?
Well, I have to say, I mean, you guys may not identify with this, but I had really awesome teachers, like really inspiring. I had a high school biology teacher. I had her for 2 years, and we're Facebook friends now, so like we're still in contact. She was amazing. She was a really amazing teacher, and actually a lot of my classmates from that biology class are biology teachers, or they're scientists and academics, or they do outdoor education with like nature and environment. And so I think she actually had a pretty strong influence. I mean, you guys, unfortunately, you may not have this experience, but for those of us that had really awesome biology teachers, that was one person. And then I had two professors in college who really took me under their wing. The one that brought me to Colorado, and then another one, I took a seminar with this guy who is really awesome. And he made me feel comfortable around the world of science. Like I wasn't intimidated or anything by him. He invited us over to make sushi in his house, and he was just like a really great scientist. And so I think those people have been really, they've made me feel like I also can be a scientist. It's not like scary or weird or like only for ultra geniuses. Like it's actually something that I can do. And a lot of my peers, I think, have similar experiences. So here's to the good teachers of this world.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cameron, and what's your favorite movie?
Oh man. Oh, I think I saw this on a list of questions and was hoping you wouldn't ask it. My favorite movie, because it's hard for me to think of that because I see a lot of movies and then I don't remember them. Um, Pass, and I'll think about it.
Hi, my name's Kiara, and my question for you is, what's your favorite book or books in general?
Well, I can talk about some of my favorite authors. I really like Barbara Kingsolver. I think if you're into science, she can be a really interesting author. She's written a few about monarch butterflies and about the Appalachia area that are really great. So I'm a big fan of Barbara Kingsolver. She really tries to bring science into her books. Mr. Madden, have you read Barbara Kingsolver books?
I have. Love them.
Okay, yeah. See, there you go. And other authors I like are I like Paul Auster. He's kind of an interesting author. He does a lot of New York-based writing. I lived in New York City before I moved to Mexico City. So he's really kind of a fun author for things related to universities in New York and stuff. Um, Jonathan Franzen is an author I really like. The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay is such an awesome book. Mr. Madden, have you read that book? He can't hear me.
But I'm writing it down.
Yeah, great book. White Noise I really like. That's a really great book. My favorite books from high school were Siddhartha and Fahrenheit 451. Like, I think those books were really instrumental in my development as a teenager. Yeah, I see someone nodding. Maybe you guys read those in your classes and you like them, maybe. Yeah, Catcher in the Rye, obvi, good one from back in the day.
Hi, my name is Chris, and
Hi, Chris.
I was wondering what's your favorite animal and why?
Oh man. Okay, so that I have a two-part answer because I really like dogs as like a standard animal. That's my favorite accessible animal, like one that you would have contact with regularly. And after that, like one that you wouldn't have contact regularly, I gotta say that koala bears tie between koalas and sea otters. You guys have sea otters up there, right? Literally cutest thing of all time. When they sit and open the sea urchins with rocks, can't get enough of these guys.
Hi, I'm Isabella, and I was wondering, what is your favorite place you have traveled to, and why?
Let's see. You know, I'm not that well traveled. I spend a lot of time in the same places. I have to say that one of my favorite cities is Cusco, Peru. I have been there with Mr. Madden, right? Did we go to Cusco together once?
We did.
Or were we only in the Amazon? I can't even remember anymore. I can't, my brain. I love Cusco, Peru. I think it's an amazing, beautiful city. So that's one of my favorite places.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Parker.
Hi, Parker.
My question is, can you tell us about like your average day, like what you do day to day schedule?
Well, let's see. So my job consists of a combination between teaching graduate students and working on research. And so those things entail different things. Like the research is writing papers, academic papers, having meetings with other researchers, applying for money for new research, reading articles. So all those things are like part of the research bit. And then the teaching is teaching, like being in class, and then meeting with students afterwards. And then also I'm like their what's it called, advisor. So they'll come and meet with me and we'll talk about their thesis. Part of that is lunch, which in Mexico they eat at like 2 to 3 in the afternoon, which is really kind of difficult. So there's a lot of snacking in there. So this semester I taught a class that was at 7:30 in the morning, 7:30 to 9:30. And so 2 days a week I had that class, and then I would go to my office and meet with students and read and write and that kind of thing. So it's actually pretty, I think one of the questions was if it's stressful or something like that. I don't know if you're still going to ask that question, but generally it's not that stressful in general. It can have stressful periods, but like the average is not that stressful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, is it all in Spanish?
It is. I am teaching in 100% Spanish.
Oh, how's that been?
I know, right? It's so tiring. And one day I was like, can't I just do one class in English? And they said no. So I couldn't. Yeah. I know. Bummer.
Hi, I'm Kate. I was
Hi, Kate.
wondering, how did the Megadeth Project start, and where are you hoping to go with your research?
So the Megadeth Project, and I had not remembered that I gave you guys information about Megadeth, so that's cool. This is a project that was, so my PhD advisor, it's her project, and she got me this job as a professor in Mexico. She's actually Arizona State in Phoenix. But she started this project with like a collaboration with this university, so it was already happening. And this is because she's really interested, and I'm also interested, since she was my advisor, in how people adapt to like changes in climate and like difficult kind of shocks. So like prices, they're a farmer and all the prices drop, or they're a farmer and there's a drought, like how people reorganize themselves with these kinds of problems. And so the countryside of Mexico has gotten a little complicated to do work because it can be dangerous in some areas. So she was really interested in doing work in Mexico City, which is ironically less dangerous than going to the countryside of Mexico. And Mexico City has like a lot of ironies related to water. Because have any of you been to Mexico City? No? Really? You want to so bad? Or you, yeah? Mexico City is really cool. You guys it would blow your minds. Like you could not believe it. It's a really interesting place. And it was the capital of the Aztec Empire, but it was in the middle of a lake because there was a myth that they should establish their capital where they saw a snake eating a cactus, or an eagle eating a snake on top of a cactus, which if you guys pay attention on the Mexican flag in the middle of the white stripe is the symbol of the eagle eating the snake on a cactus. That's like the original Mexican symbol. So anyway, Mexico City was founded in a lake, literally a giant lake that had some islands, and it was like swampy everywhere, and they founded their capital, and then the Spanish came, and then they founded their capital of the colony of Spain in the lake. So they started pumping water out of the lake to dry it. So now we have a city of like, well, inside this like lake bed is at least like 15 to 20 million people that has half the year with no rain. So there's water shortages, and then half the year with floods because it used to be a lake. So it's this very odd reality of like either too much water or not enough water. And there's a lot of research done on this, but she was really interested in being able to show like a mix between what's happening biophysically, like with water and with climate change, and then what's happening with people, like what are people doing in the government and what are people doing in their neighborhoods, and try and show that all in like a map platform. So she got a grant from the National Science Foundation, NSF. They give money for research in the US. And NSF is really interested in this interdisciplinary stuff right now. It's like in style, popular. So she got this grant to be able to do this in Mexico City. And this is the second or third year. So I came into my job and it had already started. And so I've come in to start helping do data analysis and connect like the biophysical data with the social data and all sorts of things. So that's how that started. But Mexico City, that's like it's crazy. It's like people don't have water at all. They have to like walk down a hill to a hose, or they deliver it in trucks. There's a lot of places in the city that don't have water. So that's how that happened. Does that answer your question? Was that really boring? Do you guys want to come to Mexico City now? I can tell you the like exciting things about Mexico City. Mr. Madden, you got to come down. Mexico City is the jam.
I will. Yeah, I'll be a lot closer in a few months.
That's right. A hop, skip, and a jump.
I'm TJ.
Hi, TJ.
My question is, why is the Megadeth Project so important?
Yeah, so what's happening in science, you guys, so you understand, like, there's a lot of these concepts. So I'm in the sustainability program, and this concept of sustainability is coming and entering into like things about the environment. And there's a lot more interest in taking things that previously were just biophysical and integrating the social part. But it's really hard to do that, like interdisciplinary. What are people doing? How does it affect the environment? How does the environment affect them? It's really hard to do. So part of Megadapt is the theme of water, which is really important. But the other part is showing an example of how we can incorporate an analysis with the social stuff, like interviews and workshops with people, and the biophysical part, like the climate and water aspect. So it's very hard to do because things are different scales, it's different kinds of data. And so we're trying to be a model for it, because a lot of people say they're going to do it and then they can't. In the end, it's really hard to have like climate data is at really large resolution. It's like large areas, and then you have like one interview with one person. So how do you put that into the same analysis? It's really hard. So that's one thing. And then the issue of water, we want to do what we call social learning with people that make decisions about water, because it's a very unsustainable system. So we like have them incorporated into the project from the beginning and in the middle and the end, and we want to be able to show that maybe potentially their ideas about the system have changed somewhat to something that we consider to be maybe more sustainable, because right now it's very problematic water here. Thanks for the question, TJ.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Phil, and my question is,
Hi, Phil.
why is agroforestry and silvopastoralism a good thing?
Okay. So you guys maybe saw an article about the silvopastoral systems in Colombia. Yeah, this is also really popular right now because the majority of land area on Earth, ice-free land area, is dedicated to something related to either having cattle on it or having crops that are fed to livestock. So it's a huge portion of the planet. And it's also cattle themselves tend to be very extensive. In the US, we have these feedlots, the famous feedlots that are really kind of gross. But most of the world has large areas of cattle, like a lot of the Western United States, maybe also Eastern Washington's maybe a little bit like this. So yeah, there's a lot of negative externalities. It's like a term for negative things that the system produces that aren't incorporated into the cost, like emissions from cattle or cutting down forests to plant grasses, or the impacts of all the fertilizers to grow the corn that you feed the cattle. And there's all these kinds of externalities. So these silvopastoral systems are a really nice example of how you can produce more in less space, and you're actually planting trees and bushes and things that are carbon sinks, so they're like absorbing carbon. And the cattle grow faster because they're full of protein. It's like things like legumes, like beans in the legume family. So they have a lot of protein. As the cattle eat them, they grow faster. So it's a more efficient system on less land. So we can maybe have less land and cattle and reforest another part. So for the global carbon balance, that's really important. And also just for, biodiversity, having more different kinds of plants and trees instead of just grass is also really important for different kinds of organisms. So that's the same with other agroforestry too. Like you have shade-grown coffee and things like that that are also agroforestry systems. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you think economical inequality will affect the design of most farmers toward this farming style? And do you think silvopastoralism will become more popular?
Yeah, so economic inequality is a huge part of any work on sustainability, and particularly, well, it's the same in the US. The US is more unequal now than it has ever been. But particularly like in developing countries, this is a big problem because silvopastoral systems are amazing, but they're actually really expensive to implement. they're like these beautiful, amazing systems, but they have to change their entire way of doing things, and it costs a lot. So that means that a lot of producers can't do them unless they have some sort of support. And that also means that right now, most of the silvopastoral systems are a very small part of like the overall system, you know? So in Colombia, there's a project to implement silvopastoral systems, and it's all funded by like the British government and the World Bank and the Nature Conservancy. It's like all of these international institutions putting a whole bunch, like millions of dollars for 3,000 farmers to adopt these systems. But without that money, they wouldn't be able to adopt these systems. So it makes it kind of difficult to say everyone needs to do this when they can't do it. It's too expensive. Which is kind of part of the answer to your second question. So there's some big barriers for more people to have these kinds of systems, but there's also a lot of interest. And one thing that would help would to have a carbon tax, but the US Congress is against it. So a carbon tax would put a price on carbon. So that means that if people are more carbon emitting, they have to pay, and the people that emit less carbon can have that money and put it into these kinds of projects. See, so that's what a carbon tax, putting a price on carbon would help that a lot. Until that happens, the projects are probably going to be at a pretty small scale. In Mexico, there's also a lot of interest in silvopastoral systems. But again, there needs to be some sort of money going towards helping the farmers implement them. Thanks for the question.
I'm Sienna, and I have 2 questions for you. What kinds of data, scientific and social, do you collect for your research? And what is the hardest thing you've done as a scientist?
Well, how much time do you have? Because this is a pretty long answer. Okay, I'll make it short. Here's some examples, like for Megadeth. Okay, so this is a project that's studying water and the risks associated with water in the city, not having enough water or flooding. So the risks have to do with health, right? Like if you don't have water, maybe you're drinking contaminated water, or you have other kinds of, if it's flooded, maybe it's polluted. So one analysis that we've done is just a geographical analysis that relates sickness in the city, gastrointestinal illness like salmonella and things like that, with other kinds of data to see what are the patterns of that kind of sickness in the city. And what we find is that the neighborhoods that have less infrastructure, like they don't have plumbing, people don't have toilets connected to the grid, they don't have water arriving to their house, they have the highest incidence of gastrointestinal illness. So that was something that we didn't even have to go talk to people about. The data already exists in maps, and so we did an analysis that was spatial and statistical. And then we have social data that we can do like in a focus group, which is nice, like 10 people in a room from a neighborhood, and we ask them questions and they all sort of talk together, and all of that is transcribed. There's someone that's writing everything down. And all of that text, we can take that text and analyze it kind of qualitatively, where we look for themes, like what's all the times that they talked about getting sick, or what's all the times that they talked about flooding. And we can put all of that text together, and we can do sort of a qualitative analysis of how people talk about these things.
All right.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Will, and my question
Hi, Will.
is, do you ever feel conflicted about your work?
Can you elaborate? Like conflicted in what way?
Ever, like, is there ever, like, controversial, like, parts of your research or anything?
Oh yeah, all the time. Controversy. Yeah, so you guys understand that like environmental problems are not just environmental. They're environmental, they're social, they're political, they're economic, right? And there's all sorts of different interests. You guys listen to the NPR thing on the rhinos, you know, and it's like there's a lot of different actors with different needs, and it creates a lot of conflict. So in the project I was working on before I got to Mexico and Colombia with the cattle, the silvopastoral systems, there's a lot of tension there between the Ministry of the Environment and the Ministry of Agriculture, because the Ministry of Agriculture wants to produce, and they're not concerned about the environment. And the Ministry of Environment was really concerned about the environment, but they don't care about agricultural production. Agricultural production is how people make a living. So there's a huge tension in general between conservation and how people make a living. That's like kind of the essence of environmental problems in general, right? People wanting to make money from any different scales, like either businesses or like farmers or ranchers or hunters. And then you have people that want to conserve that resource. And that creates a lot of conflict constantly. So, yeah, definitely.
Hi, my name is Len.
Hi.
And my question is, how do you feel about the controversy in Radiolab's Rhino Hunter?
So yeah, that's I feel like that episode was sort of a microcosm of a lot of larger things. And I really I thought they did a really nice job showing the role or at least the viewpoint of hunting, particularly this idea that by putting a value on wildlife, people want to protect it. That's actually a really huge deal in environmental conservation. So anyway, yeah, I think that the idea of putting a value on wildlife, a lot of people don't like it because it doesn't feel good to be like, this is worth $1 million, because it's like reducing the value of wildlife to something that's money and not like the cultural value or the aesthetic value. But at the same time, the best way to protect nature with all of these economic and all these kind of conflicts is to actually put a value on it. And that's something that I've seen over and over again. So I appreciated in that Radiolab how they try to, as neutrally as possible, kind of show the whole world of what was happening. You know, I don't know if you guys had that same reaction, or something like that. Thank you.
Wait, well, hang on then. Would you have burned all the ivory or use the money for?
So that's an amazing example.
Isn't that crazy?
I love that interview because it makes tons of sense that he changed the way that people related to ivory, and instead of just, you know, like I'm still conflicted about it, actually. I didn't come away like feeling really solidly one way or the other after that. I actually felt a little more convinced about putting a value for the hunting element after that.
Has that come into play at all in your work in Mexico, like directly with, or in South America? I know big game hunting is more popular on the African continent, but has that particular thing come up, like wildlife value?
Yeah, well, actually, I had a student just do a presentation on the sustainable use of wildlife as a form to increase like people's livelihoods or like income in certain areas. Because there's a part of Mexico where people can like put kind of like a zoo, like you can have like a deer in your yard and people could come visit the deer and then you charge a fee, you know, so it's like an interaction between what's considered wildlife and like people, how they live and interact with wildlife. And they're trying to promote this in a way that's regulated so that there's like good treatment of the animals and everything. And that some of it is hunting related and some of it is just like seeing the animals. So, for example, they eat turtle soup in this region and there's a like species of turtle that. Anyway, so it was a really interesting discussion that we had in class about where the concept of conservation comes from. And for a lot of parts of this global south, like Latin America or Africa or Asia, that comes from Europe and the US. So there's a cultural value associated with like conserve everything at all costs. It's like the white man comes in to be like conserve. And so there's a lot of reaction to that because it feels like colonialism, like a new form of colonialism to tell people what to do with their resources. So that's actually like in general a big issue, even though it's not big game, but the concept of this like use of wildlife is a big deal in the whole global south because that's where there's, you know, the tropics are mostly in the global south. Yeah.
Hi. Hello, I'm Zachariah.
Hi, Zachariah.
How can we stop poachers, and do you have any insights into working with folks to help reduce eliminating poaching?
Yeah, so this is the kind of thing where I came away understanding more the value of hunting from that episode. I don't think you can stop hunting. I don't think it actually makes sense. It's like stopping any other form of wildlife use, you know, stopping fishing or other forms of hunting. I think there need to be legitimate ways of having these kinds of interactions, which I think was the position of the guy that went to shoot the rhino. He was, I am providing income. You're not going to, at that it was called like the convention for hunting, you're not going to just eliminate people's desire to hunt. So it's kind of like an uphill battle. It's the same with fishing and fishermen and overfishing. There's a great book called For Fish. Mr. Madden, have you read that?
No.
It's all about, it's 4 of the top fish that eat tuna, cod, and it's all about overfishing and like how we came to overexploit these resources. And it's trying to show examples of how to fish sustainably, because we're not going to stop the fishing industry. We're not going to stop people from eating fish. So I think these conversations need to not be about eliminating and more about like how to work with this kind of action or like desire to do these kinds of activities. Because we've always been shooting, hunting wildlife, fishing. I mean, that's like the history of human civilization. So we need to figure out ways to do it that are sustainable. Hello.
I'm Will. This is a bit of a cheesy question, but what is your proudest...
Cheesy?
Yeah, well, what's your proudest moment as a scientist?
My proudest moment as a scientist is actually my proudest moment as a teacher. Like so this is my most recent proudest moment. Mr. Madden, listen up to this. The other day, a group of my students were sitting in the lounge of my building, and I was like, hey, how are you guys liking class? And they said, your class has changed the way that I think. Proudest moment. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that was like, basically I can retire. Yeah, that's right. That's like what my mother did. That's fine.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jack, and I was wondering what your favorite experience as a scientist has been, and what is the coolest thing you've seen?
The coolest thing I've seen?
Or most dangerous?
Most dangerous? Oh my gosh. What about living in Mexico? Does that count? No, it's not really that dangerous. I mean, in theory it is, but it doesn't feel that way. Gosh, most dangerous well, I mean, for example, there are places that I go that I prefer not to know what's the deal. And then later people say like, wow, that's actually a really dangerous area where people get kidnapped or where there's like a lot of violence. That happened a few times in Colombia where I went to a place that really the daily life you don't feel the violence. But afterwards I hear like, oh, actually in that area, there's a lot of tension between guerrilla groups and local populations, and there has been all sorts of kidnappings. And so that's kind of like a normal like part of my life is being in these kind of places where there are incidents that luckily don't affect me, but it's not impossible that they would affect me. So it's not like I saw a tarantula. It's like, oh, someone got kidnapped and that I knew. So that's not a pleasant part. That hopefully will maybe get better in Colombia because they have a peace accord that they've been working on. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but yeah, they've been trying to come to peace with all the different armed groups in Colombia. It's basically a 60-year war between lots of armed groups. What was the first question?
What is your favorite experience as a scientist?
Well, going to Peru with Mr. Madden and other groups to the Amazon, that's That's pretty cool because I don't do my research in the Amazon, but I got paid to go with groups of high school kids and their teacher, and other groups of like middle school kids as well. And that was one of the coolest things that I did, and I did that for years, like 5, 6 summers. I did that. We would fish for piranha and go see. Go in the canopy of the rainforest trees, and it's really amazing. My research tends to be a little milder, like not so wild, but that was pretty fun in the Amazon, right, Mr. Madden?
Yes, ma'am.
Alright.
It's cool.
Thank you.
All right. I think that about wraps us up. Amy, you're the best. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Let us chat with you. Everybody.